we doing, Louisiana? Now, I want you to know I'm real nervous tonight. You know, I'd gotten a text from Charlie around July 24th. I remember it's right here. I keep it in my phone. And he says, hey, you want to join me on LSU's campus on 1027? And of course, I said yes. Because that is how far he was in making sure that he was on every campus, that he could make a difference. And I want you to know he wanted to be right here with you all tonight. And I want you to know, if you noticed in that video, I want you to know there are some unbelievable, great things that are happening in Louisiana. And there are some immensely great things that are happening in America. And it is because of the work that Charlie and Turning Point have done to lean in to Donald Trump's Make America Great Again, and you are a part of that. Because for the great American dream and for the great American experiment is literally fully dependent upon you. And that's why I say that in that line, that how this ends depends on you, because you are in control of your destiny. And collectively, you are in control of America's destiny. You know, I want to thank, I really can't tell you how much I want to thank Erica Kirk. And how about a big thank you to the Turning Point team? Because they understand how important this is, and that's what I want to spell out. You know, I was lucky enough to go to Charlie's service in Arizona. JT and I were lucky enough to be there with the president and the cabinet and all the great speakers. And I was really impressed by Larry Orn, the president of Hillsdale College, because in 3 short minutes, which is how long his speech was that day, he spelled out, he told the story about a young Charlie Kirk who at 19 years of age had came to him to visit with him. And as they engaged in that conversation, of which Larry posed a series of questions that, I mean, can you believe it? That actually stumped Charlie Kirk. I thought that was kind of weird. But he did. He stumps Charlie in this conversation, and Charlie's bewildered, and so he asks Larry, he said, what should I do? And Larry Orn says, well, you have to suffer. If you want to grow, you have to suffer, because it's hard to learn. You have to read. You have to read into the night. You have to read at the crack of dawn. And you start with the Bible, and you read the classics, and you study the founding of America. And he said, and in each one of those places, you will find that there's a ladder that reaches to God. And I was like, wow. Wow. Because what Larry Orn did in not only that day at that service, but what he did in that conversation with Charlie is he makes it abundantly clear that it all starts with God. And he makes it clear that the foundation of which you can stand on, and the more solid that foundation is when you center God, because with God, there is nothing that is impossible. And as I watched Larry giving this 3-minute speech, I could just put myself thinking how Charlie was and how, to me, I think that was a turning point in his life. Now, he's had some great turning points in his life. I mean, married a beautiful woman. He's had some amazing kids. And every time he had one of these events, I guarantee you, it was a turning point in his life. But as Larry spoke those words, I began to think back upon my childhood. You know, I grew up in a middle-class family. I could actually tell you we were in the poor category for a while during the bust of the 1980s. There's probably many of you who were not even around or even thought, maybe y'all don't even study the 1980s all bust in Louisiana anymore. Probably shouldn't. A lot of people want to forget it. But my mother was a school teacher, and she loved to read to us. She loved to make sure that we could read, and she taught us how to read. And she was also a high school basketball coach who coached women's basketball, and she would deposit me in the library of the high school while she engaged in practice with the girls. Why? Because I was a troubled child. That's really the definition of what ADD was back then. It's just there really was no medication for me, so she put me in the library. And, you know, now I'm sure that many of you all are ferocious readers, right? Yeah, maybe. I know it's easier to check it out on Instagram or TikTok or see those great new 15, 30-second videos. It's okay. It's absolutely entertaining. But I want you to understand that there is nothing that can take the place of physically reading. And I want you to know that Charlie Kirk was a ferocious reader. And I want you to know that he was a ferocious reader. Why? Because he understood what Larry Orn was telling him. He understood that reading a book is an honor, and it's a gift. And it's a gift from the author of that particular book who sets aside the time to write out a lifetime of experiences. And each of our personal experiences in our lifetimes are not enough to sustain us. And that's why reading is so important. And that's why I enjoy reading. And I'm also a curious person. And the one thing I want to challenge you all, especially those that are in a university setting, be curious, ask questions, seek the truth, not your truth, the truth. And if you want to know how curious I am, ask my wife. I would drive her crazy. Back in the days, some of y'all don't remember this. See, they used to have these things called taxi cabs. You'd get in the back. We get in the back. We were going from point A to point B. We were on vacation, going wherever we were going. And I loved to get in the taxi cab, and I would immediately start asking the taxi cab a million questions. And it would thoroughly embarrass my wife. And she would be hitting me like, let the poor person just drive us to our destination. You know, but that's what curiosity is. It's wanting to understand, because you know what? You never, ever stop learning. And so I was thinking about something. I thought I'd tell y'all a little story, entertain y'all just a little while before we bring Allie on, because she's unbelievable. But so I'm telling you how curious I am. So just imagine me getting to go see the president in the Oval Office this year. And I'm like, oh my God, I got so many questions. Because the Oval Office is the centerpiece of democracy. It is a global symbol of freedom. It projects America's power. It demonstrates to the world that Americans do not bend the knee to no one other than our God. So So I walk in, and of course, there's the president. I want you to know I don't do a great impression of him. Mike Johnson does the best. But I walk in, and you just, it takes you a little while. It's not as big as y'all think it is. But I want you to know the one thing that struck me, because I knew this before I walked in. So when you get elected to become the president, one of you in this audience may one day, you get to design, well, you don't. If you're a man, your wife will. And I guess if you're a woman president, you get to design it, right? I guess. Normally the first ladies will design the rug, which I think Melania Trump did for the president's first term. But any of y'all know whose rug is in the Oval Office right now? Anybody? Donald Trump, when he became president, he had them fetch Ronald Reagan's rug. And he decided to paint and decor the Oval Office with legends, with presidents. In fact, the other thing that you notice, Marco Rubio has got about 15 jobs. One of them is the National Archivist. And so he had him go around and fetch out. In fact, he had Sergio do that too, who, by the way, that's how I met Charlie Kirk, who came and hunted alligators with me. I think down in 2018, 2019, we had such a great time. He went out and he hand-selected presidents from the past who he believed in America first, or any part of his America first policy. And he said, I want those presidents on the wall in the Oval Office. Not him. There's not a picture of Donald Trump I can think of, maybe on his back with someone, but not on the walls. There's almost no more room. I mean, they're all there. Washington, Lincoln, Madison, Jefferson, Jackson. And he goes on and on. He's got a portrait of Reagan. It's the biggest one. It's the biggest one. It's to his left. Went out and he picked them all up. He's got them all decorated. But the greatest treasure that he's put in that Oval Office, I think, I don't know, the media's here, so maybe they will fix me, I promise you. If I say something that's not true, you will read about it immediately. And you can't even read about it in the morning anymore because it gets right on X. But he put, I think, for the first time, the Declaration of Independence. And it's unbelievable. So I walk in, and he loves to tell the story. I told him, go get the Declaration of Independence. I want to put it in the White House. And he said, he looked at me, he says, can you do that? He says, I'm the president. Marco says, we're going to get it. They said, well, Mr. President, you got to be careful because it's a very old document and it's very light sensitive. No problem. So he designed these beautiful blue curtains with this gold brass. I'm telling you, he loves to tell his story. It's like watching an 8-year-old talk about the coming of Santa Claus. Isn't this the greatest? This is so beautiful. How you like the curtains? I designed them. Because he's a designer. He's a builder. And then he says, so he pulls them up. He says, look at this. And then he tells me, he says, get next to this. I'm going to take a picture. So I'm thinking, he's going to take a picture with me. I'm thinking, I'm trying to help my career here, right? I need him with me. But he doesn't do that. He takes the picture. Now think about that. The President of the United States sits there and takes a picture with another American citizen by what he believes, and I believe, is the greatest document that has ever been written in this world. And you might be saying to yourself, well, why the Declaration of Independence? Why doesn't he bring the Constitution? I'm going to tell you why. Because he recognizes that the Declaration of Independence is the beginning of America. Not the Constitution. the Declaration. We celebrate our birth. We celebrate our independence on July 4th, not September 17th when they signed the Constitution. That document is where it all began. And that document represents honor and courage. Because nearly 250 years ago, 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence. And they pledged, in the document, they wrote these words: "We pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor." Now, these were not reckless men. And I'll tell you something else. How many of y'all are under 40 in here? Raise your hand. Aha. Okay, well, let me tell you something. Of the 26 men who signed the Declaration of Independence, of the 56 men who signed the Declaration, 21 of them were under 40. In fact, 3 of them were in their 20s. Almost all of them were extremely educated. Many of them were very wealthy. And all of them were highly respected in their community. And yet those men risked everything for freedom. They risked everything for the idea of creating a place where all men are free. And so, let's talk about them for just a quick second. Many of these men were captured, tortured, killed, lost their homes, their families. In fact, one of them actually had 13 children. His wife died, and he never saw his children again. Many of them lost their livelihoods, but none of them ever recanted. They stood firm in the face of ridicule, violence, and murder because they understood that liberty is worth the cost. They understood that freedom is not free. Just like Ronald Reagan eloquently said that freedom is not free, it is always just one generation away from extinction. Our parents don't give it to us in our bloodline at birth. And you know what? Charlie Kirk understood that. Charlie Kirk understood that freedom must be fought for, it must be protected, and it must be handed down. And the handed down part is important to understand because the handed down part means that we must educate people on freedom. And that's why we're here. We're here because we're standing up for what you believe in. We're here because we're seeking the truth. We're here for defending that we're all created equal in the eyes of God. And that we're recognizing that we have been gifted with certain unalienable rights that only come from God, that no government can give us. It is given to us by God. And that is what the Declaration of Independence spells out. And it is the only document in the world that spells that out. Think about it. Still today, it's the only document that spells it out the way it does. And so because of that, it must be defended at all costs. Because you do the right thing no matter what the cost is. And God will honor you. And thank goodness that today we don't have to fight with muskets and cannonballs. We get to fight with ideas, with dialogue, and with faith. Because civil disagreement is not weakness. It is the strength of democracy. America is the only place in the world where the marketplace of ideas is supplanted for fighting in the streets. And I want you to know that courage doesn't just exist on battlefields. Courage can exist in the classrooms, in town halls, and in every place that truth must be spoken. Being America means you must be like the signers of the Declaration, who are willing to risk everything for the promise of America. Because whether we continue to champion freedom and opportunity and responsibility, or surrender to overreach and decline, that question is up to you. How the greatest story of America ends depends on you. So the greatest pledge that you can take, the greatest pledge that you can take for America is the greatest pledge that Charlie took. It is the pledge that he took every day. It's the one that every person in the military takes. It's the one that law enforcement officers take, the one that our first responders take. It's the pledge that I take every day. It is the pledge of our lives and our fortunes and our sacred honors to keep America free. And know this, America and the world is counting on you and Turning Point. God bless you. Thank you so very much.